Okay, let's talk about absolute value equations. And we have a practice problem here that we're going to discuss the three main steps to solve absolute value equations. So if you think you can solve this particular equation, go ahead and pause the video, put your answers in the comment section. Of course, I'm going to go through this and you can kind of check out and see how well you understand absolute value equations. And this isn't to be confused with absolute value inequalities. Oftentimes when students are studying, absolute value, they learn how to solve absolute value equations, and then they learn how to solve absolute value inequalities, and then they confuse the procedures, and so that's a pretty common mistake. So make sure if you know what you're doing with this problem that you're not using the procedures or the steps that we use in absolute value inequalities, and I'll do different videos on that, but we're going to focus in here on equations. Now, I'm also going to review very quickly the basic concepts behind absolute value and absolute value equations. So we're going to get to all of this in just one second, but first let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher. I'm going to leave a link to my math help program in the description of this video. But if you're one of those students out there that is frustrated with math, maybe you don't feel like you're getting enough math instruction or enough practice where you really kind of understand what's going on, or maybe you don't really connect with your teacher's teaching style. Whatever the case might be, I've been teaching math for decades. I really pride myself on breaking things down in bite-sized, clear, and understandable components. So if you're at the middle school, high school, or even college level in terms of mathematics, I can help you succeed in your respective math courses. Now, if you're taking any test or you're scheduled to take a test that has a math section on it, I'm talking about things like the GED, SAT, ACT, GRE, GMAT, ASVAB, AccuPlace, or ALEX exam, maybe a teacher certification exam. You get the idea. I can help you prepare and pass those exams. If you homeschool, definitely got to check out my whole entire homeschool math program. Very, very comprehensive. Been working with homeschoolers for many, many years. And if you don't have any math notes, don't panic. I'm going to leave the links to my math notes in the description of this video. But if you want excellent grades in math, if you want like those top fantastic A pluses and whatnot, you have to take great math notes. So there's just no way you're going to be successful in math without taking excellent math notes. Okay, so let's get to our problem here. Again, if you think you know how to do this problem, go ahead and pause the video and just don't look at your notes. This should be something that you have in your memory. Now, if you've taken any, or if you are taking an algebra course, you're going to have to know how to do this. And again, if you've taken algebra, you already learned this, and this is going to come up over and over again. So I'm going to go ahead and review a basic problem with you, and then we'll get into the actual problem here. So let's take a very simple problem. The absolute value of x is equal to 3. Well, you can see here I have a number line, and this is 0. So what is the absolute value? So in other words, if I went absolute value of 3, okay, what is that equal to? Well, hopefully most of you out there be like, oh, that would be equal to 3. Now, how about the absolute value of negative 3? What is that equal to? Well, hopefully all of you are like, isn't that equal to 3 as well? You would be correct. So negative 3 and 3, okay, on a number line, the absolute value tells us the distance a number is from 0. So right here, when we're taking absolute value negative 3, we're really asking a question. How far is negative 3 from 0 on a number line? Well, it's 3 units away. How far is 3 from 0 on a number line? Well, it's also 3 units away. So that's what absolute value represents. Again, it's the distance a number is from 0 on a number line. That's why the absolute value of a negative number is positive, because remember, we measure distance in positive units. Okay, so now knowing that, we can take a look at this equation. Okay, the absolute value of what number is equal to 3? Well, we just kind of saw here that if we take the absolute value of negative 3 and the absolute value of positive 3, okay, both of these numbers here will give us the answer of 3. So when you're solving absolute value equations, remember that you're always going to have two answers. So in this case, x is equal to negative 3, and x is also equal to positive 3. Okay, so just a quick basic review of why we're going to do what we're going to do next. And I'm going to show you the steps to solve absolute value equations. And the first step oops, I didn't mean to do that, is to isolate. We need to isolate the absolute value part of the equation, and then we want one number on the other side. Now, this might require a couple, two or three different kind of subsets, but the main step here is to isolate the absolute value equation part, and we want to have one number on the other side of that. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here in a second. Now, the second step is we're going to set up two respective equations, and then the last step here is we're going to solve. So these are the three main components to solving an absolute value equation. So let's get into the actual problem here, and we'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so here is the problem. 2 times the absolute value of x plus 5 is equal to 14. Now, one of the things that a lot of students do, it's a very common mistake, is they think they have to do the distributive property, or think they confuse this absolute value function with like a grouping symbol, like 2 times x plus 5 is equal to 14, and then they go, oh, 2x plus 10. They try to solve this like an equation, an actual equation. That's not the case. Remember, you cannot distribute this outside number here. But our main goal is to isolate. We want to isolate this absolute value part of the problem. So how can I do that? I have 2 times this absolute value function is equal to 14. So what I can do is divide both sides of the equation by 2. Okay, when I do that, I'm going to get 7 is equal to the absolute value of x plus 5. Okay, so I'm just dividing both sides of this absolute value function by 2, and I get 7 is equal to the absolute value of x plus 5. So this is the first part, or the first step, is to isolate this absolute value function on the left-hand side, and then we're going to have one number on the right-hand side. Now, sometimes you have to do a few more additional steps in this isolate part of the problem-solving process, but this is what we are talking about. So once we're done isolating, we're going to move on to step 2, and step 2 is to set up our two equations. Now, how do we set up our two equations? Well, let's take a look at this absolute value. Okay, so absolute value of x plus 5 is equal to 7. Now, I'm going to just erase this right here, okay, and I'm going to put in one big X, okay? I'm thinking absolute value of something is equal to 7, all right? Let's go back to this equation. Absolute value of what number is equal to 7? What two numbers, we already saw an example of this, can X be in order to get an answer of absolute value of some number is equal to 7? What can X be? Well, hopefully you say, oh, X could be 7 or negative 7, and we would be correct, okay? So let's go back to our problem. Absolute value of X plus 5 is equal to 7. All I know is this, X plus 5, I know what you are. You're either a 7 or a negative 7, okay? That's the only way we can get an answer of this absolute value of some expression here is equal to 7. So you say, okay, x plus 5, you're either 7, or x plus 5, you're either negative 7. So this is our second step. We're going to set up two equations, okay? So we're always going to get two answers when we're solving absolute value equations. So this is our setup for our two respective equations, and then we're going to go ahead and solve those equations. Here we have x plus 5 is equal to 7. I simply subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. I get x is equal to 2. And here I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. I get x is equal to negative 12. And these are our two answers. Okay, so how did you do? Did you understand this? Did you get the right answer? And if you got the right answer, let me go ahead and give you a nice happy face with a good old 1984 flat top haircut, an A plus 100%. And let me give you a few stars just so you can have an extra special day. Nice job, okay? So again, when we're studying the topic of absolute value, there's a lot of stuff we need to know. Well, one, we need to know the definition, which we talked about. The distance a number is from 0. We need to know how to just do basic absolute value evaluating numbers, like taking the absolute value negative 3, things like that. And then we're going to have to understand how to do absolute value equations, absolute value inequalities. We're also going to need to know how to graph absolute value functions and absolute value functions and finding the vertex and all this kind of good stuff. So there's quite a bit to know when it comes to absolute values. So how do you want to learn this stuff? Well, I have additional videos in my algebra and pre-algebra playlist on absolute value, but I really teach this thoroughly in any one of my algebra courses. So hopefully this little video was a nice review for you. And if this helped you out in some small way, go ahead and consider smashing that like button. That helps me out in a big way. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, hopefully you'll consider subscribing. I've been on YouTube for 10 plus years, have over 1,000 plus math videos. I'm posting stuff all the time, basic math all the way up to calculus. So I try to spread it around. And really, again, my whole focus is to try to teach math in a clear and understandable way. So if you like my teaching style, please take advantage of the content that I've already made, will be making, but my best math help will always be within my math help program. Okay, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.